Namaste. In the previous class, we looked at the two mechanisms involved in nucleophilic substitution, SN1 and SN2. We looked at the various factors that determine whether an alkyl halide undergoes a reaction through SN1 or SN2. One of the factors being the nature of the alkyl halide, whether it is primary, whether it is secondary or tertiary. If it is tertiary, it will predominantly undergo SN1. If it is primary, it will predominantly undergo SN2. If it is secondary, just like what is shown here, it can undergo both SN1 and SN2. The solvent that is used also plays a role in finding out whether a reaction goes through SN1 or SN2. If we take the reaction in a polar solvent, then SN1 is preferred. If it's a non-polar solvent, then SN2 is preferred. The nucleophile strength also determines whether the reaction proceeds via SN1 or SN2. If the nucleophile is weak, then it tends to help SN1. If the nucleophile is strong, then it tends to help SN2. So these are some of the things that we looked at in the previous class. I gave you a homework. The homework was on differentiating between SN1 and SN2. I hope we have made a list of all the factors that are different between SN1 and SN2. So let's look at the table here. The first factor that we are talking about is molecularity. When we talk about the molecularity, SN1 is unimolecular, SN2 is bimolecular. So unimolecular indicating that in the rate determining step or in the rate equation, the rate of the reaction is only dependent on one molecule, and which is the alkyl halide. Whereas SN2 is bimolecular, which means there are two molecules involved in the step which determines the rate. And since it is a single step reaction, the first step itself will indicate the rate. And in the first step, there are two compounds or two molecules, both the alkyl halide and the nucleophile, which determine the molecularity. In talking about the kinetics, SN1 is first order and SN2 is second order. Steps: SN1 is a two-step process. The first step is formation of a carbocation, and the second step is attack of the nucleophile, whereas SN2 is a single-step process via a cyclic transition state. Now, the intermediates that are formed, carbocation forms the intermediate, whereas in SN2, there is no intermediate, but there is a transition state. So there are two transition steps here, whereas there is only one transition step. Attack of the nucleophile, it can happen either from the front side or from the back side, whereas in SN2, attack happens only from the back side. Nucleophile, a weak nucleophile is favorable, whereas a strong nucleophile is favorable in the case of SN2. Bond making and breaking is not simultaneous, clear, whereas in the case of SN2, we looked at the transition state. In the transition state, the bond between the carbon and halogen is about to break, and the bond between carbon and the nucleophile is about to form. We saw that with the help of dotted lines that are written between the carbon halogen and the carbon nucleophile. Stereochemistry, racemization. If substrate is optically active, we will look at what is racemization within a few minutes. Whereas in the case of SN2, inversion of configuration, which means the product is inverted with respect to the reactant, and we also spoke about this inversion as Walden inversion. Now, the type of the substrate. Now, substrate is nothing but the alkyl halide. In the case of SN1, it is a primary alkyl halide. In the case of SN2, it is a tertiary alkyl halide. Then polarity of the solvents. In SN1, I need to have a polar solvent. In SN2, I need to have a non-polar solvent. Yeah, so these are some of the points that we discussed, and these are the points that differentiate between SN1 and SN2 mechanism. Clear? Now, one of the things that we looked at in SN1 is that we spoke about racemization, clear, under the aspect called as stereochemistry. Now, where did you hear this word stereochemistry for the first time? you learned it for the first time in your first year when you did isomerism. So when we came across isomerism, we spoke about the different types of isomerism. Under isomerism, we studied two different types, two major types: structural isomerism and stereoisomerism. So structural isomerism and stereoisomerism. Now, under structural, you came across a lot of things: chain isomerism, link isomerism, functional isomerism, and so on. Under stereo, we studied one of the isomerism in the last year, which was geometrical isomerism, where you came across cis and trans forms. In the second year, we will be studying about optical isomerism. That was one isomerism that we did not study in the first year. And when we came across that, we said we will be covering this in the second year when we start that. And this is the point where we'll be talking about optical isomerism. So stereochemistry is basically got to do with stereoisomerism, and under stereoisomerism, specifically with respect to optical isomerism. Now, what is the definition of stereoisomerism? That's what we saw in the previous year. Structural isomerism: two or more compounds have the same molecular formula but differing in their structure. These two compounds are structural isomers, and the phenomenon is called as structural isomerism. Whereas stereoisomerism or stereoisomers: two or more compounds having the same molecular formula but differ in the arrangement of atoms or groups in space. They differ in what? Arrangement of atoms or groups in space. So they have the same structural formula, but the only difference is how the atoms or groups are arranged in space defines stereoisomerism. So under that, we came across geometrical isomerism, where we had cis and trans. We looked at carbon-carbon double bond and the groups attached to carbon-carbon double bond. If similar atoms or groups are present on the same side of the double bond, we called it as the cis form. If similar atoms or groups are on the opposite side of the double bond, diagonal to each other, then we called it as the trans isomer. Yeah, that is something that we studied in the last year. Now is the time to understand optical isomerism. Clear? So let us try to understand, focus what is about optical isomerism in today's class. Now, optical isomerism, this isomerism is got to do with the arrangement of atoms in space. Now, this is something that we already spoke about. Stereoisomerism is nothing but a type of isomerism where we are focusing on the atoms or groups in space, arrangement of them in space. Now, for any compound to show optical isomerism, there has to be a chiral center, very important. Clear? Now, if any compound should show optical isomerism, what should be there? There has to be something called as a chiral center or a chiral carbon. Now, what is this chiral center or chiral carbon? A chiral center or a carbon is an atom that is connected to four different groups. So, what is a chiral center or a chiral carbon? It is a carbon that is attached to four different groups. So if it is attached to four different groups, then we call such a carbon as a chiral carbon or an asymmetric carbon. So we call it as a chiral carbon or what carbon, or an asymmetric carbon. Clear? Now a chiral compound, who is a chiral compound? Anybody who has a chiral center. Now, what is a chiral center? It is an atom. Basically, here we are talking about carbon. So, it is a carbon which is attached to four different groups. Now, we know the valency of carbon is what? 4, which means it can have how many bonds around it? It can have 4 bonds around it. Now, all the 4 bonds around the carbon atom should be with different atoms or different groups. If such a carbon is seen, we call that carbon as a chiral carbon and or a chiral center. So anybody who has a chiral carbon or a chiral center, they can rotate the plane of plane polarized light. Now, this is a bit difficult to understand. We will understand it with the help of a diagram in the next slide, but let us try to understand what's happening here in terms of words. A chiral compound can rotate the plane of plane polarized light. Here, either to the right, if it rotates to the right, we call it as dextrorotatory, or to the left, if it rotates to the left, we call it as levorotatory. Now, even after me repeating it 2 times, I know it's difficult for you to understand what's happening in this particular sentence. We will understand this better when we look at the diagram. So I'll just park it here so that we will understand it through specific case, and then we will come back to this. Optical isomers are non-superimposable mirror images of each other. So who are optical isomers? They are non-superimposable mirror images of each other. Such a set of optical isomers are called as enantiomers. Okay, so let me repeat. Optical isomers are non-superimposable mirror images of each other. A set of optical isomers are called as enantiomers. Now coming to what word we came across in SN1, racemic mixture. What is a racemic mixture? It is an equimolar mixture of enantiomers. Equimolar means equal number of moles. If I have 5 moles of one enantiomer and 5 moles of another enantiomer, I mix it, I get a racemic mixture. Now I am very sure that you would have understood till here, till what is meant by a chiral center. From here till the last point, there is a question mark. Clear? So keep that question. All those questions will be answered when we talk about the next set of slides. Now, when we go through all those slides, we will again come back to this slide to see whether we'll be able to understand each of these statements or not. Clear? All right. So let's go to the next slide. Now, this talks about who is a chiral center. Now, I want you to observe this compound. Look at that carbon and find out whether it is a chiral carbon or not, whether it is a chiral center or not. What was the definition that we used for a chiral center? Yes, it can be a group or an atom. It is always a carbon atom here because we are talking about alkyl halides. It is an atom that contains 4 different groups. Clear? Now, carbon here, is it bonded to 4 different atoms or groups? Let's check. First one is chlorine, second one is bromine, third one is hydrogen, and fourth one is fluorine. Yes, so this carbon is actually bonded to 4 different groups. Since it is bonded to 4 different groups, we call this carbon as a chiral carbon. Clear? Chiral carbons are indicated by star. Now, star is what is used. This does not look like a star, by the way, but just for our understanding, chiral carbons are indicated by a star. So whenever there is a star written on a carbon, it indicates it's a chiral carbon, and that carbon is bonded to 4 different atoms or groups. Clear? Such a carbon is called as an optically active carbon. Clear? Such a carbon is called as what? Optically active carbon, and the compound is found to be optically active. The compound here, this compound shown, is found to be optically active. Now, who is an optically active compound? An optically active compound is the one which will rotate the plane of plane polarized light, which we saw in the previous slide. Here, so if I have a compound which can rotate the plane of polarized light, then such a compound is called as an optically active compound. We will understand this better when we look at the next slide. Now, it is also called as an asymmetric molecule. So chiral carbon is also called as an asymmetric carbon. Now, why is it an asymmetric? Asymmetry means there is no symmetry. So if I look at this compound here, across any plane that I take, I cannot break this into two equal parts. You're able to observe? Yes. Say if I take this plane, can I break it into two equal parts? No, I cannot, because on one side I have bromine, on the other side I have fluorine. Now, if I take this plane with bromine, carbon, and fluorine, can I break it into two equal parts? Not possible, because on this side I have chlorine, this side I have hydrogen. So, no matter how much you try, you cannot break this compound into two equal parts. On the other hand, let me take this example. Who's this? This is methane. Now, in methane, can I have a symmetry? Can I break this compound into two equal parts? Yes, I can. Either I can take this plane. If I take this plane and break it, I get two equal parts, right? Or I can take this. If I break it into this, in this plane, I get two equal parts. So this is a symmetrical molecule, clear? Whereas this is an asymmetrical molecule. Now, even if I have two different atoms, again it can lead to symmetry. Say this is X, this is Y. I can still break it here to make this symmetrical. When will a compound become symmetrical? Only when the carbon is bonded to four different groups. Clear? So if a carbon is bonded to four different groups, it becomes asymmetrical, and we call that particular carbon as a chiral carbon or a optically active carbon. Clear? All right. Now let's understand this. Now, this is a chiral carbon. Clear? So this carbon is a chiral carbon. Why is it a chiral carbon? Because it's attached to four different groups. 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's attached to four different groups. Clear? So this is asymmetrical and it is optically active. Now, what will happen is, if I place a mirror here, what is the structure I will get? Yes, I will get this structure. This is called as the mirror image. What is this called? This is called as the mirror image of this particular compound. So this is optically active. Why is it optically active? Because it has a chiral carbon. What is a chiral carbon? A chiral carbon is somebody which has four different groups. Anybody which is having a chiral carbon is found to be optically active. And if I take this and I write the mirror image of that, I get a set of enantiomers. I get a set of what? Enantiomers, which is what is given here. Optical isomers are non-superimposable mirror images of each other. A set of optical isomers are called as enantiomers. Clear? So the two structures that we wrote there, the structure and the mirror image, they are non-superimposable, which means I cannot superimpose one on top of the other. Such isomers are called as optical isomers, and a set of these two is called as enantiomers. Clear? So these two are enantiomers. This is enantiomer 1, this is enantiomer 2. Now we spoke about chirality, right? Or chiral center. Chir means hand. Clear? Chir means what? Hand. That's the same thing that we use in our language Kannada as well. Kai means hand. This actually came from the hand. The concept actually came from the hand. Say if this is my left hand, if I place a mirror, what do I get? Yes, I get my right hand. Are these two mirror images of each other? Yes, they are. This is where the concept of chirality actually got its name. Clear? So chirality is derived from the word chir. Chir means hands. Now the left hand and the right hand are mirror images of each other. Likewise, this molecule and this molecule are mirror images of each other. They are not superimposable. What do I mean by superimposable? If I take this structure, take it and put it on top of this, will they superimpose? No. Will yellow be on yellow? No. Will red be on red? No. Clear? They are non-superimposable. Such non-superimposable mirror images are called as enantiomers. Same thing with your hand as well. If you just take your hand like this and put it on top of this, will the thumb be on top of the thumb? No. In fact, this thumb will be on top of the little finger. This little finger will be on top of the thumb. Clear? Forefinger will be on top of the ring finger. Clear? So this is what is called as non-superimposability. Same way, if I take this molecule and put it on top of this, I will not have red and red, yellow and red and yellow being on top of each other. Same thing with respect to green as well. Probably this and this will superimpose, but as a whole, the compound will not be superimposable. So are these two superimposable? Yes. Are these two mirror images? Yes. Are these two optically active? Yes. Why are they optically active? Because there is a chiral carbon. So now you understand the definition. Optical isomers are non-superimposable mirror images of each other. A set of optical isomers are called as enantiomers. So this definition is something that we have understood. Let's look at the other two now. All right. So this is one more slide which talks about compounds, alkyl halides. Now, is this a chiral carbon? Can I put a star here? Why can I put a star here? Because yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's bonded to 4 different atoms. Clear? So since it's bonded to 4 different atoms, this is a chiral carbon or a chiral center or an asymmetric carbon. Now, to this, if I place a mirror here, what do I get? I get the mirror image, which is this. Now, this is my mirror image. So these two compounds, 1 and 2, are called as enantiomers. Clear? They are isomers having the same molecular formula. They differ in the arrangement of atoms in space. One is a mirror image of the other, and these two images are non-superimposable on each other. Clear? I have one more example for that, for an alkyl halide. Now, is this alkyl halide chiral? Observe. Is this carbon chiral? No. Why no? Because it is not bonded to 4 different atoms. It's bonded to 3 hydrogen atoms and 1 carbon atom. Is this carbon chiral? No. Again, because it is bonded to same atoms. Is this carbon chiral? No, because it's bonded to 2 hydrogen atoms. What about this carbon? Is this carbon chiral? Yes, it is, because on one side I have ethyl. This is the second group, the third atom, and the fourth group, which means this carbon is attached to 4 different entities or 4 different substituents. Such a carbon is called as a chiral carbon. And any compound which contains a chiral carbon is called as a chiral molecule, and a chiral molecule is optically active. If I take the chiral molecule and place it in the mirror, if I place a mirror here, what do I get? Of course, this is my mirror image, and this mirror image is what? Non-superimposable on this. Yeah, so the mirror image is non-superimposable. So non-superimposable mirror images are called as what? Enantiomers. So now do you understand what is meant by enantiomers? All right. Now coming to this slide, very important slide. Now this slide, the moment you understand, you will be able to focus on what all we said in the previous slides. Clear? I want your complete attention here. If I look at normal light, clear, normal light that we see, normal light that falls on us, It is composed of particles which will vibrate in all given directions. Now, can you see that? Light is composed of particles or photons which can vibrate. And in normal light, ordinary light, they will be vibrating in all the directions. Clear? 360 degrees. That's what is indicated by the arrows here. They keep vibrating in all directions. The moment I pass ordinary light through a prism, clear, a Nicol prism, whatever light is coming out, observe what's happening to that. Yeah, what's happening to that? What's happened to it? Yes, all the particles which were vibrating in multiple directions, after passing through the prism, will vibrate in only one direction. Can you see that? Yes, all the particles which were vibrating in multiple directions are only vibrating in one direction now. Here, this is called as plane polarized light. Okay, what is this called? Plane polarized light. And this phenomenon is called as polarization. So what's happened from left to right here is called as polarization. Fine. Now this polarized light is vibrating on one single plane here, whereas it was vibrating on multiple planes here. It is vibrating on one single plane. Now when this light is made to pass through an optically active substance. Now who is an optically active substance? Somebody which should have a chiral carbon. Now, who is a chiral carbon? A carbon which is attached to 4 different atoms or groups. So, when this light is made to pass through this particular compound, the plane can either be rotated to the right, as shown here. This is the original plane. Here, whatever I've shown in the arrow mark here, this was the original plane. Now, there can be two kinds of compounds. One compound can rotate the plane towards the right. That is what is seen here. Here, this was the initial direction. Now it's rotated to what direction? To the right by an angle theta. Clear? This is done by compound 1. Clear? Likewise, there is one more compound which can rotate the plane of the polarized right to the left. Can you see this? This is the original plane. Look at what's happened to this rotation here, to this plane. It's rotated to the left. By what degree? By a degree theta. Clear? By the same angle. Clear? This compound will be what? This compound is compound 2. Now, which compound is compound 1? Which compound is compound 2? Based on whatever we have studied so far. Can you guess? All right. So if one mirror image, if this rotates the plane of the polarized light to the right, then its mirror image will rotate the plane of the polarized light to the left. Clear? So when polarized light is passed through this compound, now this is plane polarized light. When this is made to pass through this compound, if it passes through compound 1, then the plane will be rotated what? In this direction, to the right. If this light is passed through compound 2, then it will get rotated by an angle theta towards the left. Clear? Such compounds or such rotation is called as dextrorotatory or levorotatory. Now going back to this point here, a chiral compound can rotate the plane of plane polarized light either to the right. If it does that, it's called as dextrorotatory, or to the left. It's called as levorotatory. Now, who is a chiral compound? A chiral compound is somebody which has a chiral center, which has 4 different substituent groups. Got that? So basically, we're talking about enantiomers. If one enantiomer is rotating the plane to the right, the other enantiomer, which is the mirror image, it will rotate the plane to the left. Clear? Got that? So let us understand this once again with this diagram. I'll take this diagram here. So this is a cross section of light beam showing random orientation of electromagnetic waves. Clear? So they are oriented in different planes initially. When I pass it through a filter or a Nicol prism, then all the particles, all the waves will just vibrate in one single direction or one single plane. Clear? Such a light is called as plane polarized light as indicated here. Now, this can be passed through two compounds, compound 1 and compound 2. Now, are these two compounds chiral compounds? What should you do if you have to find out whether it is chiral or not? Yes, you should check the carbon atom. This carbon is chiral because it's attached to 4 different groups. This carbon is also chiral because it attached to 4 different groups. This and this are mirror images of each other. Clear? This and this are mirror images of each other. If I have mirror images, one of them will rotate the plane. Now look at the direction of the plane here. It is in this plane. Now look at what's happened to that. It's rotated to the right. Clear? This would have been the original direction. Now compared to the original direction, what's happened to it? It's rotated to the right, and this angle is called as theta. Got that? Here this angle is theta. This is called as a dextrorotatory substance or the D form. Clear? Then coming to the second compound, the mirror image. The mirror image will rotate the plane of polarized light to the left. Look at how it's rotating. It's rotating the plane towards the left. The original direction was like this. This is actually a straight line, but can't write it that way because of the inadequacy of the mouse. But this is my theta with the rotation, the angle with which this plane is rotated to the left. If it rotates to the left, we call such a form as a levorotatory form. Clear? So let me repeat once again this entire concept. The concept of optical isomerism. Optical isomerism is a type of stereoisomerism where two or more compounds have the same molecular formula but differ in the arrangement of atoms in space. A compound is said to be chiral if it has a chiral center. Now, who is a chiral center? A chiral center is a carbon which is attached to 4 different groups. Now, if I take a chiral compound and place a mirror, I will get its mirror image. The original compound and its mirror image are non-superimposable on each other. These non-superimposable mirror images are called as enantiomers. Are called as what? Enantiomers. And what is the role of enantiomers? One enantiomer will rotate the plane of plane polarized light to the right. Such an enantiomer is called as a dextrorotatory isomer, and the other isomer which will rotate the plane of the plane polarized light to the left is called as levorotatory. Clear? Now, how do we see that? We can see it with the help of this process. You initially take ordinary light, which is composed of electromagnetic waves vibrating in all given planes, all given directions. When it is passed through a Nicol prism, it comes out vibrating in only one single plane. We call that as plane polarized light. When we pass that light to an optically active compound, which can either be dextrorotatory or levorotatory, depending upon what is it, it will rotate the plane of the polarized light either to the right or to the left. If it rotates to the right, we call such a compound as dextrorotatory. If it rotates to the left, we call such a compound as levorotatory. Clear? And the angle of rotation remains the same. Whether it is dextro or levo, the magnitude of rotation, how much it rotates to the right or how much it rotates to the left, is equal. Theta is the same. Such a phenomenon is called as optical isomerism. Clear? Now then, what do we mean by a racemic mixture? Racemic mixture is nothing but equimolar mixture of enantiomers, which means I take 50% of this, 50% of this. I mix these two in one beaker. Clear? I mix 1 and 2 in this beaker. Clear? So this is 1, this is 2. And how much am I mixing? Equal quantity. Same moles, say 10 moles of 1 and 10 moles of 2. I have a mixture. This mixture is what is called as a racemic mixture. What is this mixture called? It's called as a racemic mixture. Now, I will give you a homework. Is a racemic mixture optically active? This is the question I want you to take. Question is a racemic mixture optically active? Clear? Now, let us understand what is meant by optically active. Now, here we came across the word optically active substance. What does it mean? If any substance, any compound can rotate the right to the light to the right, or it can rotate the light to the left, then we call a compound as an optically active compound. For an optically active compound, I should have a chiral carbon. Clear? Now, is this compound optically active? Yes, it is. Why is it optically active? Because this carbon has 4 different groups. Is this compound optically active? Yes, it is, because it is attached to 4 different groups. But I want you to find out, if I take 50% of this, or 50 of this and 50 of this, and mix these two, it forms a mixture. What is that mixture called? That mixture is called as a racemic mixture. I want you to find out whether a racemic mixture is optically active or not. Clear? Got that? Yeah. Now let's get back to this slide where we wanted to understand everything. Optical isomerism is an isomerism that has got to do with the arrangement of atoms in space. Pretty straightforward. For any compound to show optical isomerism, there has to be a chiral center. There has to be a what center? Chiral center. Now, who's a chiral center? It is an atom that is connected to 4 different substituent groups. Clear? Now comes the interesting part. A chiral compound can rotate the plane of plane polarized light either to the right or to the left. If it rotates to the right, we call it as dextrorotatory or the D form. If it rotates to the left, we call it as levorotatory or the L form. Clear? So optical isomers are non-superimposable mirror images of each other. Optical isomers are non-superimposable mirror images of each other. A set of optical isomers are called as enantiomers. So this is your other homework. I want you to write the definition of enantiomers 3 times. What are enantiomers? I want you to give an example. Yeah, so this is your other homework. What are enantiomers? Give an example. Then coming to the racemic mixture. A racemic mixture is an equimolar mixture of enantiomers. Clear? So now after all the other slides in the front, we are able to understand each of these points. This phenomenon is what is called as optical isomerism. Now let's come to what we studied here in SN1. In SN1, when we looked at the stereochemistry of the products, we said both inverted and retained products are obtained. Racemic mixture is formed if we start with a chiral alkyl halide. Let me repeat once again. Racemic mixture is formed If we start with a chiral alkyl halide, now who is a chiral alkyl halide? Say, let me take this carbon. On one side, I have CH3. On this side, I have C2H5. On this side, I have hydrogen and I have chlorine. Clear? Now tell me, is this compound chiral? Yes, it's chiral because this carbon here is attached to 4 different groups. Clear? Now if I place a mirror here, what do I get? Yes, of course I will get the mirror image. How will the mirror image look? Cl will be here, CH3 will be here, H will be here, and who will be on this side? C2H5. Clear? So these two are mirror images of each other. When these two are mirror images of each other, we call these non-superimposable mirror images as what? Enantiomers. Got that? Yes, it is enantiomers. Now, this is a chiral alkyl halide. Is this a chiral alkyl halide? Yes, this is a chiral alkyl halide. He is saying when this undergoes SN1, if this undergoes SN1 with OH minus as the nucleophile, what do we get as a product? I get an alcohol. So I want you to take this as homework. I want you to take this compound, whatever is shown here. I want you to carry out SN1. Clear? SN1 mechanism just like this. Here we took this alkyl halide, right? Instead of this alkyl halide, I want you to start with this alkyl halide. Clear? And go ahead, find out what are the products. We said there are 2 products that are formed, inverted and retained. Clear? And we said probability of inverted and retained being formed is 50-50% equal. So both will be formed in 50-50% quantity. Because both the products will be formed in 50-50% quantity, we will get a racemic mixture. I want you to find out whether you will get a racemic mixture or not. Clear? So I want you to take this as homework. This compound, whatever is mentioned here, this I want you to take and do SN1 mechanism for that. Look at the products that are formed, both the products, both inverted as well as retained. Clear? Find out whether a racemic mixture is formed. Clear? That's the first homework. Second homework, enantiomers. Definition of enantiomers. Third homework, I want you to draw this diagram. Clear? So draw this diagram. You can draw this diagram itself. How optical isomerism is seen. Clear? Fine. So this is the homework for today. This is what is called as optical isomerism. Of course, I gave you one more homework, right? The fourth one, whether a racemic mixture is optically active or not. That was the other homework I gave you, whether the racemic mixture is optically active or not. Clear? So we will stop here for today's class. I want you to ensure that you complete all the homework, all the necessary homework, and understand the concept of optical isomerism. So we'll stop here in today's class. We will continue with the next set of reactions in the next class. Thank you. Namaste.